Sidechain compression, what is it? Let's figure it out. Welcome back, folks, to the final part in this compression masterclass. Today we are talking about an infamous subject matter, sidechain compression. We're going to figure out exactly what it is, the different types of sidechain compression there are, and look at some examples of when you might implement it. So the first thing to mention is that there are two main types of sidechain compression: internal and external sidechain compression. Internal means that the compression is being worked out within the compressor itself, so all of the processing remains within the compressor. External means that the compressor is looking for a source from outside of the compressor that is coming into the compressor to tell the compressor what to do. So internal, everything stays within the one compressor. External means that something else is coming in, telling the compressor what to do. Let's look at the first most simple example. Now here is our SSL G-bus compressor, which is on our mix bus here. This is exactly the same as it was when we dialed it in before. The sidechain part of it is just this one dial down here. You can see here it says SC, that's sidechain, HPF is high pass filter. So what happens is that as we increase this, a high pass filter gets brought in and you can roll it all the way up to a maximum of 185 Hertz. So not that high in the frequency spectrum. What does that mean? Now here's an important point to clarify where lots of people get confused. The common misconception is that any sidechain within a compressor will mean that whatever is within that sidechain will not be compressed. That is incorrect. What actually happens is that the sidechain will allow you to tell the compressor what you do or do not want the compressor to respond to. Now in this instance, with the sidechain high pass filter, what we're doing is removing low frequencies from the sidechain. What that means is that those low frequencies are allowed through the compressor without making the compressor respond. So on a mix bus like this, for example, you can often find that if you are trying to compress your whole mix together with the low frequencies and everything else all in one go, you might find you end up getting this kind of pumping effect, which sometimes is cool, sometimes you'll want that, but more often than not, you probably won't. In this instance, we can use the sidechain filter to say, I don't want you to engage the compression on those low frequencies. I just want you to respond to anything that is not included in that sidechain filter. Let's show an example of that. So you can see here that our compression is being triggered by predominantly the kick and the snare when they hit. I'm going to increase the amount of compression by decreasing the threshold here so that the compression is more extreme. And then I'm going to use the sidechain filter to allow the low frequencies through so that they are not triggering the compressor. So you see, with that sidechain filter set at around 120 Hertz, the compressor is now responding much, much less to the kick. It's now basically only giving me about 1 dB of gain reduction on the kick hits, but it's still getting up to 2.5, 3 dB on the snare hits. Now I'm going to put this threshold back to where it was previously. And you see that it's now only responding to those snare hits. So that's one example of sidechain compression. And you'll find that lots and lots of compressor plugins have a high pass filter in their sidechain, especially bus compressors. You'll find it on all of them. So here on this Slate Digital, compressor, I've got the high pass filter in the sidechain here. Over here on the waves version, I've got the sidechain here in the middle. On the UAD version, I've got the sidechain high pass filter over here. So it's everywhere, right? And if you were to look on your, for example, your stock Logic Pro compressor, you'd say, okay, so where is it? I don't see it labeled so clearly. We just need to hit this sidechain tab over here, and that will give us our whole sidechain section. So this is where sidechaining gets a little bit more complicated, because we can specify things that are more complex than just don't compress the low frequencies. Of course, we can do that in this context as well, but in this compressor, if we look over here at the mode option, you'll see that we've actually got 5 different modes that we can choose between. So we've got the high pass filter here, HP, which is exactly the same as we just looked at on the bus compressors. We've got LP for low pass, which is obviously the opposite of a high pass. It means that you're telling the compressor not to respond to high frequencies. You're letting the low frequencies into the compressor, but the high frequencies are not triggering the compressor. You've also got BP, which is a band pass filter, which means that you can specify a certain frequency point, perhaps in the mid-range, where you don't want that to be triggering the compression. And then we've also got 2 other modes within the sidechain here. We've got a parametric EQ mode, which, as you'll see, engages this gain knob, as well as a high shelf mode, which again has the gain knob engaged. What that means is that we can specify a frequency at which we want to boost or cut the sidechain in this instance. Those are the most complicated types, but the ones that you'll probably want to use more often than not are these 3, the low pass, band pass, and high pass. Now, the different modes that we've got going on here. We've got a max and sum. Now, you'll see that this is either or. The max means that it is going to respond to just the highest signals. Now, that's particularly relevant if you've got a stereo channel. So if you've got a left and a right coming into your compressor, it's going to look for the highest signal between the 2 channels. Whereas sum means that it's going to be looking at both channels to see what the highest signal they both achieve is. So that's the difference there. And then you've also got the option of specifying whether it's looking at peak signals versus RMS signals. Peak being the highest point, RMS being root mean squared, which is more of an average kind of thing. It's not as simple as that, but that's a whole different conversation. Now, the other nice thing that you have is that you have this mode here, which allows you to either turn the sidechain off, to turn the filter into listen mode, so you can just be listening to exactly what you want to be letting through or triggering the compression, and then you can put it into working mode, on mode. So let's show an example of this. I'm on my drum channel here, so let's just solo the drum channel. Let's use our stock compressor on our drum channel. I'm going to go to the sidechain, and I'm going to do exactly the same process as I did previously on the bus. I'm going to use the high pass filter to let the kicks through the detection circuit so that the kicks are not setting off the compression. So you see at that point there, just below 200 Hertz, I'm in listen mode. So I'm just listening to the high pass filter. So I'm just listening to everything that's above that frequency point. And as you can see from the gain reduction meter, the kick is now no longer triggering that compression. It's just the snare that's triggering it. And when I turn this to on, we'll then be listening to the full signal, but with the sidechain engaged. So that's a really cool thing to know about. You have quite a lot of control in this compressor. Let's try and do the reverse of that. Let's try and use the low pass filter to allow everything that isn't the kick through the detection circuit and just trigger this compressor with the kick. Let's see if we can make that work. So you see now, this compressor is only responding to the kick hits. It's not responding to the snare. So that's internal sidechain compression in a nutshell. The other option that you've got is external sidechain compression. I'm going to close this compressor. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to put back on the manually that I had. Now, external compression means that we are telling the compressor to listen to a signal that's coming from outside of it in order to tell the compressor what to do. So you'll see up here, I've got a sidechain box and it says internal at the moment. I can change that source to anything that I want. So I've got my drum instrument, 70th Street drum set here. I'm going to put that in the sidechain. What that means is this sidechain detection circuit is now listening to that drum channel. It's not listening to the bass guitar anymore. It's just listening to the drums. What I'm going to do is to isolate the kick that's incoming and tell it to compress every time the kick strikes. So, similar process to what I just did. I'm going to use the low pass filter to isolate the kick drum. So now you'll see that the gain reduction meter here is responding to the kick drum as it's incoming. So every time the kick strikes, it's compressing the bass guitar and ducking it, getting the bass guitar out of the way in order that that kick drum has space to shine through. Why is that a useful thing? Well, because where we've got instruments that are competing for the same frequency area, and this is one of the most common cases, the low frequencies and the kick and bass in almost any genre, you're able to use a technique like this in order that they can both utilize a similar frequency area without them just masking each other all the time. In this instance, I'm saying, okay, you can both stay in that same pocket of frequencies, but each time the kick drum strikes, the bass guitar is going to get out of the way. And that's a really useful tool. Some other instances where you might use it, well, we might use it, for example, between our guitar and lead vocal. If we find that those things are competing too much, go on now. I can set the sidechain of this plug-in here to our vocal. And you see now that this compressor is ducking the guitar out of the way when that lead vocal is performing, which is a really cool technique to understand. So that's sidechain compression internally and externally. I hope that's been nice and clear and valuable for you. If you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you again soon for another video.